In this video, you're going to discover the inner workings of exactly how my apprentices and I produce such extraordinary results in today's market. And we're going to go so in depth that it'll help you better understand how you can apply the same techniques and strategies so you can begin producing similar results. Hi, I'm Phil Pustiovsky. You know who I am by now, and hopefully you've watched other videos, you've read my books, and you've better understood where we're coming from, which is a place that up until this point nobody else had pioneered. We're the first to fully master the art of mentoring others and sharing in profits with them, and that is what my apprentice program is all about. Now in this video, I want to show you what we're doing, how we're producing those results, and also give you more of a background so you can be more empowered, because I know what it feels like. When I first got started, I remember I'd read these stories or I'd see seminars, because back then we didn't have YouTube videos and the internet was just getting started. So when we tried to get information, we either had to go to some local seminar or we had to go to a real estate investment club meeting or read a book. And I'd read these stories of these people that were successful and made $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on a deal, and I wanted to know how they did it. I didn't want to just hear the number. I wanted to know the inner workings, because if I did, then I could begin to visualize me doing it myself. So putting myself back in those shoes, I want to do the same thing for you. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. You're going to learn a lot more than you may already know, no matter how many videos you've watched of mine, the books you've read. I'm going to take you further in detail. When I first got started, I was lost. It came from the fact that there was so much conflicting information out there. And it's even more so now than it was 15, 20 years ago. There is so much information just overloading people all the time. And the biggest problem with that is so much of it is disguised as truth, but it's really noise. You may have heard me say that before. Noise is this information that is incorrect, that will lead you astray, but the most dangerous version of noise is the one that sounds right. You know, it passes the snuff test. Whereas it's rare, but there is truth out there. There is signal. Now, in everything that I try to share with my entire audience, I try to share just the pure truth, the signal. So that's what you're going to get here. But when I first got started, I was lost. I was confused. And as you may know, things got real bad for me. But how it all came about was this. After graduating from Vanderbilt University with a degree in mechanical engineering, I got my first job working for an air conditioning equipment manufacturer. And I was going to be one of their sales engineers. So I went to 6 months of sales engineering training where I learned the inner workings of how AC systems work. And I remember being so bored, I would fall asleep at my desk. I didn't want that for my life. And so I began reading books on how to be wealthy. I literally went to the library. Yeah, there were libraries back then. And I read this book from an individual who was from Nashville, and that's where I was living, Nashville, Tennessee at the time. And he had acted like he'd made all this money in real estate. And I remember thinking, wow, if that guy can do it, he didn't sound all that much smarter than me. I mean, hey, I've got a college degree. I can figure this out. And so I began trying to apply what he had put in that book, and then I went to some meetings, I went to seminars, and I began applying this stuff, and at first I was really confused and frustrated. Now, what meanwhile was happening at my job is things were changing, and I had a disagreement with my boss, and next thing you knew, I had quit. And it was kind of impulsive at the time, but I really was thinking in the back of my head, well, I'll just do real estate. I'll go flip some houses. I'll make some money that way. And I remember thinking if I could just make $5,000 a month, flip one little house a month, then all would be good. Well, all was not good. So I tried to apply what I had been learning through a bunch of free sources. And what I had was noise. I didn't have signal. I didn't understand at the time that signal was something you had to go after and really grab. Either you had to pay for it in the form of trainings, or you had to earn it in the real world, but there was no free lunch. I didn't realize that. I thought all was free and everybody out there was trying to help me be rich. Ha! Doesn't work that way. So I fell apart not only financially but emotionally, and what ended up happening was I eventually couldn't pay my bills and I went homeless. I literally was living out of my truck, and it was a terrible time in my life. I lived off a case of Bush's baked beans for a month. Just picture for a moment one of those cheap can openers, and when I turned it, it would sometimes like slip off the rails and my fingers hurt, and I had this plastic spoon from Wendy's and I ate these beans cold. It was terrible. And it was at that moment in my life where I really did some soul searching. And I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I had hit rock bottom, and I got stuck one day at a gas station where there was no gas in my tank. I had no money. I had no change in the glove box, no money on my credit cards. Those were overdrawn. My bank account was overdrafted. And I literally just bawled my eyes out at a gas station just south of Nashville in Franklin, Tennessee. And I looked up toward the sky and I said, God, if there is a God, if you get me out of this mess, I'll be your cheerleader for life. I'll tell other people about you. You know, I didn't pray to become rich or successful. I just wanted to get out of being homeless at the time. And what ended up happening was, the first miracle that occurred was I was working on a deal, and I ran into a guy who was looking to flip a house because he was in Nashville visiting his mom who was going through cancer. And that individual ended up becoming my mentor. And it was through his tutelage, through the signal that he shared with me, that I got to where I am today. And so we did a bunch of deals together. We made a bunch of money. It started off slow, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But when it all came together and I was really knocking it out of the park, the real estate market began tanking, and we began doing some creative stuff with short sales. And then I ended up beginning to teach people on short sales, and I knew the entire business inside and out, but short sales was the thing at that moment. And we ended up rolling out this, what we call now the Freedom Mentor Apprentice Program. And so some of my original mentees are now my coaches. And right now, at this point, it is our understanding from every statistical metric that we are by far the most successful at the process of mentoring and coaching and educating real estate investors of any company in history. And we dominate in many parts of America right now, the real estate investing, that the best deals come to us first. We have created, in a way, a monopoly when there is so much competition. We beat them all. And I'm going to talk to you more about how we've been able to pull that off. But as we take a step back and we go kind of put our microscope to the lens of what happened with me and my mentor, it wasn't like instant. You know, he and I met. He saw maybe something in me that I didn't see. But he wasn't going to just dive right in and begin mentoring me each day and all that stuff. I had to work my way in. I mean, it was slow, one step at a time. I had to earn my way in because he didn't trust a lot of people. He'd been in business a long time. He knew that a lot of people in business don't follow through on their promises. And just like me, I was like, yeah, I'll work real hard and I'll show you. And he was like, all right, you're going to have to prove it to me. So I literally put in every nickel and dime I had. What I was doing is I was refereeing Pee Wee football on the weekends and also valeting cars. And so I was collecting a little bit of cash. And so I put everything I had into this relationship with him. And it started off really small. And he didn't have course materials. He didn't have training. He didn't have software. He didn't have any of that stuff. But he was sharing with me signal, truth. And that really was the difference. When I went out there and applied it, I talked to a lot of people. I remember people would tell me it couldn't be done, and then my mentor would laugh. And then he would show me that absolutely it can be done, and then it would end up actually happening. And I would be like, oh my gosh, a world would open up to me one step at a time. So I had to earn my way in. And so sometimes people hear my story and they say, yeah, well, Phil, someone just picked you up off the ground and voila, you became rich. It wasn't like that. I had to earn my way into working with him more and more and more. All right, so this concept of noise, this is as old as real estate investing in America, because what so often has happened is that people are giving bad information. They go out and try to apply it. They make conclusions based on that, and then they say, oh, this doesn't work. Now, these days, if I ever talk to anyone that tells me that, oh, it doesn't work around here, I have a hard time keeping a straight face. Because this one time I was talking with this individual, and he says, oh, yeah, well, Phil, it may work where you are in Florida, but it doesn't work in my area. That what you're talking about doesn't work. And I remember saying, let me ask you a question. What part of the city are you in? Are you in the east or the west? Oh, I'm in the west side. Really? We just did a deal over there on the west side. One of my apprentices did. This was about a month and a half ago. We made a little over $48,000 on that deal. It was on a road called Lariat Street. The guy goes, well, I know Lariat Street. I said, well, we just did a deal there. So while you're telling me it can't be done, we're doing it right underneath your nose. And so that's what's happening. We're doing deals that other people simply think can't be done. It's illegal, it doesn't work here, all that stuff. And you may feel the same way, that what we teach, what I mentor on, and some of the other videos you may have watched, you may get the feeling that, oh, this isn't going to apply here, or it won't apply to you personally, or something like that, which is complete nonsense. Because it does. We're doing it. We're just doing it in a way where you don't even realize it's happening. Because it's not like we're blaring our trumpets down the street saying, we just made $85,000 here on this street corner. We're not doing that. So let's go deeper into how that's possible. And what I want to separate for you is the difference between traditional and creative investing. Okay, so this is partially why we're able to produce results while other people think that we're crazy, it doesn't work around here, and all those other nonsense comments. Okay, so with traditional real estate, what happens is you're talking to a real estate agent, you are going to an auction, you might be doing a purchase through an agent or auction, that might be a foreclosure, and either way, I'm going to call this on market. The property is on the market, meaning other people can find out about the deal. Now sure, they may not know about it, maybe your neighbor doesn't, but if they had any sense at all, they could either go to a website that their auction is being held at, they could talk to a real estate agent, they could go to the MLS and find out about it. And so traditional real estate starts with this thing called on market. Now, we're going to go through how that cascades down into a whole litany of challenges. But on the creative side, these are what we call off market. These deals no one else knows about, or very few. We're talking about maybe the next door neighbor knows the house is for sale, but that's it. It's not listed with an agent. It's not about to go up for auction. Nobody else knows about this off-market deal. And so this right here allows us to slide in and do deals that other people simply don't even know is available. I recently just sold a house. It technically closed on Friday, and here is the numbers. I bought it for $70,000. I ended up turning into a vacation rental for a while. I had renovated it and did a whole bunch of renovation work, put about $50,000 into it. Did it as a vacation rental for about 2 years, made great money, and then I sold it. And when I sold it, because I did a 1031 exchange, when I sold it for $227,000. That's a true story, just happened. Now, this is what's so interesting about that particular deal. The next door neighbor to this house is a real estate agent. And after I closed and I had my crew out there working and I'm sitting out there kind of in the front of the house watching the work be done, that neighbor came up to me and said, are you the owner of this house now? And I said, yeah. She goes, that's impossible. I said, what do you mean? She goes, the owner of this house told me that he was going to sell it if he ever decided to sell it. And I said, well, the owner passed away. One of the heirs sold it to me. And she goes, oh my gosh, this house sold right underneath my nose. I've been waiting to buy this house for 20 years. And you slipped in and bought it before me? And I said, well, I'm sorry, but it appears that I did. That's the perfect essence of this subject. So first and foremost is the idea that on-market deals is traditional and creative deals are off-market. Now, off-market deals, this is key, always exist. Catch this now, catch this. They exist because people are always dying, going through divorce, health issues. They bit off more than they can chew, they have financial problems. They let the house maybe go into disrepair and they're so broke they can't fix it up right now. And on and on and on the stories go. Off-market deals do not matter necessarily based on which market you're in. Now, yes, the higher end luxury areas that have less homes are going to have a lot less potential off-market deals than maybe those areas that have a bunch of smaller homes congested together. That's simply a mathematical equation. The more houses there are, the more likely there's more opportunities there for off-market. But the reality is these always exist because they're not based on the current real estate market, whether the current real estate market is good or bad. Now, if the market's tanking, sometimes a few more off-market deals may pop up. But by and large, this always exists. That's why we're so successful year after year after year. Good markets, down markets, every situation. This creates this universal opportunity. It's because humans continue making their own mistakes. And it's because real estate always deteriorates if it's not fixed up. If the roof doesn't get replaced, there will be leaks eventually, which creates damage, which creates mold, which creates termite infestation, which creates more and more and more problems. So off-market deals are always there. Now, you may not know how to get to them. And if you've noticed, every video I ever put out on the subject of real estate investing for free on YouTube or other such mediums, I magically don't tell anybody how we find these deals. Why don't I do that? Duh, because I don't want any more competition, right? So I only want my apprentices to have that information. I only want them to have that signal. All right, so getting back to the on-market. The first problem we have with on-market is this scary thing called competition. As one of my favorite business people, John D. Rockefeller, said, competition can be a sin. So competition will bid the price up. So what I often say, especially to my apprentices, he who wins an auction is the biggest sucker in the room, because they were willing to pay more than everybody else. Now, if they were the only ones bidding, that's a little bit different. But for the most part, if you win an auction, you're the biggest sucker in the room. And to some degree, that's the same with a listing, although sometimes there are some extenuating circumstances if it was listed super high and you make some super lowball offer and magically the seller says yes. But for the most part, competition bids the price up. And what you have to understand is there's always a bigger sucker in the room or in the negotiation. There's always somebody out there willing to accept a smaller profit. And I read a statistic recently which was incredibly fascinating, that less than 10% of house flippers in America are actually at a professional level that buy properties cheap enough to consistently do it. Over 90 or nearly 90% of all house flippers do one deal. They do one. They buy a deal, they pay too much, they fail miserably, and they go move on to something else in life. So what happens is, at any point in time, you can bet on the idea that somebody in the room or somebody in that negotiation, whether it's on the MLS or at an auction, somebody's going to bid the property price up too high, higher than they should, and they're left holding the bag, and maybe they do the work themselves so they don't have to pay a contractor, and maybe they break even, make a few bucks. Either way, it's not sustainable. They can't keep doing it. So the first problem is competition. The next is market conditions. You know, if the market is really hot, there might be nothing on the market right now. I mean, there are, as I shoot this video right this moment, we're at this exact moment, we're in a situation where there is a very huge shortage in inventory pretty much universally. That creates a problem for a traditional investor because with low inventory, with no properties out there, they got to pay more money to get a deal. So that's why if you're walking around talking with, let's say, 500 real estate agents in your area, and you ask them, can you make a bunch of money flipping houses and investing in real estate in your area, they're going to say, not anymore. Not around here. Well, that's right, if you're a traditional investor. Does that make sense? Is this all starting to gel like a nice puzzle? That it makes sense why people tell you it doesn't work around here, because they're not on this side of the fence. They're over here. They're dealing with competition and the fact that the market conditions can wreak havoc, absolute havoc with them doing deals. Meanwhile, quietly over here, you got the Phil Pustiovskis and his apprentices of the world. You got the Freedom Mentor people over here. We're quietly pulling deals out. that no one else knows exists, from that heir that just inherited that property, from that person that just got divorced and now they've been quitclaim deeded but they can't afford the payments. Maybe it's that person that just bought a property and they realize that they have to move away really fast, and they have a new job coming up, and that job is going to be so profitable they're willing to take a big loss just to get the new job, and on and on and on, and we're picking up those deals. Does that make sense? So what creative does, as we've already said, is it always exists. It creates a level of consistency. And that consistency comes from when you market, and I don't want to confuse you by using the word market again, when you market for off-market deals, when you put together what I call an entire attack of trying to reach to these people, you create a consistency whereby month after month, year after year, you create consistent results. Because I do see where some people use certain objections, and they'll say, well, yeah, Phil, yeah, so your apprentices are super successful, sure, but just wait till the market changes. And I'll say, well, we were there when the market collapsed. We were there in the biggest collapse of real estate history. We made a killing. So first of all, that's incorrect, but second of all, we create a consistency that no matter what the market's doing, we can always be successful. This is why I am still a creative real estate investor, even though I have a huge portfolio of real estate, bringing in tons of cash flow, and I don't need to work. I do this because it creates the consistency. I make more money, buy more real estate. I really enjoy real estate. I enjoy doing deals. I enjoy mentoring. I keep doing it. Plus, when my kids are in school, what else am I going to do all day? Just fish and surf all day long? Come on, sometimes there are bad surf days and there are bad fish days. I get some more work in. So I create consistency, as do my apprentices. We know that they're always existing. And then here's the next thing. Now we can also do creative terms. This is a big one, because so far we've been kind of dancing around what might be the elephant in the room. What about money, Phil? Where does the money come to buy the houses? Well, you probably have seen where there's a lot of hard money lenders out there, and some people promise funding and all that great stuff. Yes, I do fund deals for my apprentices, and it comes directly out of my pocket. But we try to avoid funding whenever possible, or we try to use the seller as our funding source. Owner financing, subject to, a combination thereof. And these can be done with creative terms. You can't do creative terms over here. Agents aren't going to allow it. Auctions are not going to allow it. They want money. They want cash to close. I call it the traditional box they put you in. You have to be right here. That's all you can be in. You can't go anywhere else. You try to do anything creative, talk to an agent, what about this? Nope, you just get hit roadblocks. Nope, 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 nope. Whereas over here, you got freedom. Freedom! You got all kinds of room to do creative techniques. Because if you communicate these strategies correctly to the seller, believe it or not, it can actually be better for them. For example, let's say you put a deal under contract for $100,000. Now, if they would have sold it on the MLS, it might have sold all cash to another investor for, let's say, I don't know, 95, but then there's closing costs and commissions, so maybe they end up taking 90. But you can offer them 100, and you're saying, well, how could I offer them 100 when other investors are only paying 90 when it's all said and done? How's that possible? Simple. That's 100,000. They held the mortgage for, say, 2 months or 3 months. You made the seller your hard money lender for a short period of time. And so what that means to the seller is this: they get $10,000 more. Now you say, well, Phil, wait a minute, I thought you were supposed to be this great negotiator to kind of steal houses from people. No, not at all. They need to be win-win deals. And look, if you give the seller $10,000 more, you're not really giving up much. Because if you go and get a hard money loan at $95,000 after you pay the additional closing cost to record the deed or the security deed or the mortgage, and then after you actually pay their interest payments and all this other stuff, you have to pay $10,000 to that hard money lender, right? And who needs the money more? The seller or some rich hard money lender, right? So there's opportunities to not only do better deals for you, but better deals for the seller when you're on the creative side. So maybe you just came to the conclusion that by doing off-market deals, you're kind of cutting out real estate agents. You are. Now, you're not cutting them out when you sell. We typically sell on the MLS and a buyer's agent gets paid their 3%. But on the buy side, we are not going through real estate agents. That's an important distinction. And so more education is necessary so you know how to navigate and put these deals together when you don't have an agent on your side to help you. You need to be educated with Signal. All right, so if the deals are off market and you can do creative terms and you are allowed to have a level of consistency that doesn't happen when you're on this side and they always exist, look what you've just done. You have built a business. And not just any business, a business that can be systematized. Systematized, I may have spelt it wrong, and if I did, that just proves to you you can be rich and don't have to be a good speller. So a business that can be systematized. This can't be systematized because when the market conditions are good for traditional investing, let's say when the market absolutely tanks, then you have to rush, do a bunch of deals, and when the market gets good again, you have to stop. And so there's no system, there's no consistency. Here, you can be consistent. And you can be consistent no matter what marketplace you're in. And when you have a system, now you have something that allows you to save. System allows you to save time, energy, and money. That's what system stands for. Saves you time, energy, money. It allows you to have some freedom. And that's what we're all after, aren't we? Aren't you after the ability to be able to pay for any and all bills you may have, be able to handle any problems that may come up, like having to fix a water heater or having to replace a refrigerator or having to get a new car, and then to also have more time on your hands for your family, for those hobbies you have? That's what I got in this for. Real estate investing was supposed to give me freedom. But when I first started learning the business on this side, I felt like I was in jail. But here, creative off-market deals that my mentor taught me, the Signal he taught me that I now share with others, and of course I've built way upon whatever he taught me. We've gone to an entirely different level he never imagined possible. And that is, we have the freedom. We still do deals. We still have to make things happen. We do it in such a way where we can systemize our time, we can systemize our energy, and we're able to make more money. So if you want this, if you want to learn more about this, then keep watching. I told you this was not going to be a short video. We've got more to go. So let's dive into what our creative system is. Like, what are we doing? How are we actually going from the idea of off-market deals to actually profiting? The ultimate creative real estate investing formula is something that we have developed over a long period of time. In fact, there's a leaflet that I keep on my desk with this exact formula with notes on each step. And you're going to get access to a copy of this at the end of this video, by the way. You can download it. At the end of this video, you can download this. Okay? So, step one is going to be leads. Now, we were already talking at length about the idea of off-market. That's what I mean by leads. These are people that are looking to sell. Now, it's not just anybody, because there are literally thousands and thousands of people that want to sell their house. No, it's not the 98% of normal house sellers out there. It's what I call the 2%. It's the 2% of people out there that really need to sell because of some crazy situation, some circumstance, and they're more motivated. You've heard that phrase, motivated sellers. So that is typically the phrase that people use. The problem I have with the phrase motivated is a lot of times people confuse that with eager sellers, because step two is all about qualifying. Who really needs to sell their house bad versus who just really wants to sell their house but wants full price. And so that's where we have this phrase I call eager. That's versus those who are truly motivated. All right, and so this kind of wraps back around to step one about leads. We have developed proprietary techniques, and whether it be lists, whether it be the way that our websites are designed, whether it be the way that we utilize some of the online platforms, we have developed ways to attract or generate leads that are far more likely to be in this 2%. They're not the eager beavers, they're the truly motivated. This is one of the crown jewels of this entire business, is knowing how to get to the best deals. Some of you watching this video, maybe you already have some understanding of creative real estate investing. Your problem is you don't know how to get to the best leads. But we do. And we have spent a fortune figuring it out, and we're still constantly testing. Make no mistake, we have spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on testing. Some has been highly successful. Some has been miserable failures. So what happens is we have some proprietary techniques you'll find nowhere else because we're in this game all the time. We've developed online marketing strategies that others simply can't believe how successful they are. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail on exactly what all those are, because first of all, it'd take several hours, and second of all, without all the other tools that we provide in our system, you wouldn't be able to even implement them anyways. But the point is, you need to understand that we're operating on the 2% here, y'all. We're not operating on the 98% of sellers out there. It's that 2% that really need to get rid of their house and they have some major circumstance. Now, the main way we qualify is ultimately ask the question, what happens if you don't sell? What are you going to do? That usually cuts to the chase of whether or not they're eager or motivated. But the qualification process, we have a series of questions we go through. And we store it in a software system called ePartner. And what we're able to do there is better assess who is going to be a good use of our time and who is not going to be a good use of our time. Because we're not trying to create a motivated seller. That's not what we're doing here. You don't create those people. You find them. You search them out. You discover them, like searching for gold. You don't try to make gold out of a bunch of iron, just beating it down hard enough. It'll never work. You need to find the gold nuggets that are already gold. Okay, so that's what the qualification process is all about. And then we put the deal under contract. Our contracts are absolutely incredible. I am a little bit biased, but we spent a bloody fortune honing it in. And look, one of our corporate attorneys, he charges me $800 an hour to look at our contracts. His name's Mike. And so anytime there's any little nuance that one apprentice runs into, let's say it's in Iowa, I'm going to go back to Mike and say, Mike, this is what they ran into. Should we adjust our contract, our kind of standard template? What should we do differently? So our contracts are absolutely amazing. But the concept here is this, that what we're going to do is we're going to go from a lead that we've now qualified and we're going to put them under contract in writing with the terms of what we want to buy the property for. Now, to go from qualified to contract, there's quite a bit that goes into that. Being able to strategize what the best offer needs to be. Sometimes we make more than one offer to try to get the seller to think, okay, we can go creative terms, we can go all cash. All cash is usually lower than creative terms. And so this is a huge body of knowledge. And we have a tremendous amount of core trainings that are needed for someone to really get up to speed so you can get inside what my head looks like when I'm evaluating the deal. So the goal is you get it under contract, and here's why. This is a huge detail. You need to establish what's called equitable interest. Because sometimes we are going to close on the property and buy it with real cash. Sometimes we're going to close on it with creative terms like subject to or order financing. We are going to do a closing, right, where there's, you go in front of a title company or a closing attorney and the paperwork is signed. There's the big oak desk and all the pens. They usually have a couple of little peppermints on there and maybe some bottles of water. I've been to hundreds of closings. I know what they look like. So we do try to get under contract for that reason, obviously, but we also want equitable interest. What's equitable interest? It's fascinating. But in real estate, unlike other things in life, such as, let's say you were trying to sell a camera or an iPhone on eBay, with real estate, you can acquire an interest in the property by simply getting it under contract with a bilateral contract. So that means you can sell your interest thanks to the constitutional right of the free alienation of property. So you can sell a deal before you own it. Yes, you can. Don't tell me it doesn't work in your area. We've been up against many different real estate commissions on this subject matter, and we've won every time. We got it dialed in. So, when you have it under contract, it doesn't mean you need to be a billionaire that you pay cash for the house. You don't need to be. You need to get a deal under contract. You need to get in equitable interest. Now you have something, and you can sell what you have. Very exciting. So for some of you watching, this is paramount, because what it means is that you have the ability to sell a property that you can't even afford to buy yourself. Let's say it's some $800,000 house. You can get it under contract, and then you can resell it prior to closing, thanks to equitable interest. Now, yes, you can still buy it. I'm not saying that's the only way we do it, and please don't ever do that when you're listening to me. Don't think you can pigeonhole Phil into one thing. No, we cover it all. We're not a one-trick pony. So often you see where there are trainings and there are courses that teach you one little aspect. We don't teach you one little aspect. We teach the whole thing. You can do every kind of deal out of this formula. Every single one you can do. Traditional deals, you can do them all. So, but we want to get equitable under, we want to get under contract, because when you have it under contract, no one else can get the deal, and now you can do what we call your due diligence. So you might be thinking, but Phil, what about how much it's going to take to fix it up, and what about this, what about that? Well, we figure out all those details, and we get them ironed out to the point where we've fully verified them in the due diligence phase. Now, we do want to know how much it's going to take to fix it up and what the value is prior to doing the contract, because we need to negotiate a good deal, right? Like I said, there's a lot of work between qualify and contract. But once we have the deal under contract, now we're doing the due diligence. These are things like a title search to make sure that the person has clear title to sell you the property, or that whatever liens are on there, you can get paid off and get taken care of that. We're going to verify comps. Now, if someone is going to go after hard money or some form of funding, this is where they're going to do like an appraisal or an inspection. But you don't have to worry. You don't always have to do that. If you just get it under contract, put it on the market, you let the new buyer do the appraisal and inspection, so you don't have to pay for it. See? So now you're getting inside the black box of how someone like me, living out of my truck, eating on beans, can do a real estate deal. It's because by having access to just one contract, you can get the deal under contract, and even if you don't have the money to do all the due diligence, you can get the new buyer to do it. So, but we like to at least get a title search done, if nothing else. But there's several more action steps in the due diligence. And just to remind you, again, this is all on this right here, which you're going to get access to at the end of this video. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is what I call the exit. The exit's going to be either you're selling it, maybe you're renting it, maybe you're doing a rent-to-own on it, maybe you end up buying it and you do a vacation rental on it, and whatever that exit might be. So we're going to do that, but you're thinking, but Phil, you haven't closed yet. You're right. We haven't closed yet in a lot of cases. We want to try to sell it. We want to put it on the MLS. We want to put it on the market before we close, so we reduce our risk to zero. We don't want to have risk. We want to have profit. We want to have results. We don't want to go in there and thinking, well, it could go wrong. No, 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 no. Every deal needs to make a profit. Every deal. And it's at this level that you can walk away. See, our contract allows us to walk away. So if you're worried, well, what happens if I put it under contract? Am I required to buy it? If you use the right contract with the right language, you can walk away. Now, we typically aren't walking away at this stage unless some big problems come up. We usually walk away at this stage when we can't find a buyer, we can't find a renter. But usually you can. If you got it under contract correctly, there's always a buyer if the price is right. So keep that in mind. I have other videos on that subject. If you price a property right, you can sell any property at any time, all the time. It is always going to work. There's always a buyer if the price is right. There's always a tenant if the price is right. Okay, so we're gonna structure our exit. We're gonna lock in our buyer. It could be an investor buyer, although I'm not a huge fan of flipping to investors unless the house is a complete wreck, because they don't pay you as much money. The big money comes when you sell to a retail buyer who's going to move in, because they're a lot less price sensitive. They're still price sensitive, but it's the investors who are going to try to get the best deals from you. So oftentimes I see where trainings will talk about how you have to build a buyer's list and that you do that first before you ever start getting seller leads. That's nonsense. The best deals are flipped to one-time buyers, not repeat buyers that go onto a buyer's list. Again, I hope you're learning a lot of nuggets from this. I am pouring this stuff out on you so you understand how we're doing this stuff so you can begin to conceptualize how you can do it in your own market, in your own life. All right, and then once we have our buyer locked up, then we're going to close. And there's several different ways to close. By the way, we have invented several closing techniques that nobody else knows how to do. Literally invented it to ensure we get the maximum profit from that deal. We know how to flip properties in less than 90 days when the buyer's an FHA buyer. We're the only ones in America who figured that one out. And I'm not going to tell you how we do it unless you're a part of my apprentice program. But we've invented closing techniques that other people simply don't even know exists to allow us to make more money. And so what that allows us to do is, whereas other people might get all the way down to step 6 and fall apart, we make the money here, we make more money, so we pour more money back into leads. More money brings in more leads, and it creates this positive feedback loop. Just over and over and over again, running this thing over and over again. And that's how it's possible that someone can apply these techniques and make $500,000 with me in my apprentice program in about their first 2.5 years, and then just 1 year later make another $500,000. It's because this thing just goes faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And that's what happens. This thing fuels, more money fuels more leads, fuels this entire growth. And like I said, it's consistent. It keeps going, and that's how we become dominant. That's how you can start off from economic ground zero, absolute nowhere, and you can get all the way to the point where you're knocking it out of the park. That's the ultimate creative real estate investing formula that we invented, and that's allowed us to be incredibly successful and beat our competitors. Like I said, you can get access to this at the end of this video.